YouTube test 1, 2, 3.
Okay, welcome everyone. Before we call our meeting to order today, Councillor Haggard was not able to be here, but she did prepare a statement that she asked me to read just for information, so I want to do that. On behalf of Councillor Haggard, I just want to clarify that comments made at the last council meeting regarding crime at the port were not meant to discredit the Port Alberni Port Authority specifically, and were more specifically intended to speak to the general issue of crime as it relates to port authorities and sensitivities there for our communities. The port is obviously a valued partner for the City of Port Alberni, and we greatly appreciate their contribution to the community. She wanted to apologize for any impact the statement may have had. She was told the number of 20%, but it was a broader number, and it wasn't meant to be taken as a specific piece of information. We want to understand that policing is not the responsibility of the Port Alberni Port Authority. We do understand that we have many kilometers of unguarded waterfront, and fishing vessels, pleasure crafts can go relatively unchecked. With the increased security at our land border, our waterfronts may become even more vulnerable. The port police were disbanded in 1997 by the federal government, and there was a gap in law enforcement on the docks in all waterfront communities. In January 2024, the BC Solicitors General, Mike Farnworth, called for the federal government to restore police to Canada's ports and to port communities, and we as council support this call to action. We see this as an opportunity, and it was intended as an opportunity for the city to work collaboratively with the port and with higher levels of government to advocate for the reinstatement of port police, as we see that this should be a piece of the policing picture in our community and shared funding. It's imperative that we work together to keep our ports safe and our communities even safer, and we look forward to continuing this conversation with all community interest groups and welcome any opportunity to work with and support the Port Alberni Port Authority in ensuring safety and security at our local ports and marinas. So we'll now call to order our regular meeting of council and start by acknowledging that we work, live, and play in the city of Port Alberni, which is situated on the unceded territories of the Hupachesit and Sechot First Nations. We do have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items by council? Seeing none, any late items to add from our corporate officer?
No late items, Madam Mayor.
Then would somebody like to move approval of our agenda? Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. So we'll move on to adoption of minutes, and this is, we have the minutes from the special meeting and regular meetings held on February 24th, 2025. Move to adopt by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. We have no delegations today, so we'll move on to unfinished business, and item number 1 is the 5-year financial plan Q&A summary. Are there any items councillors would like to pull out or questions to add? Councillor Solda.
I already talked to our to Andrew about this, but regarding it's on page 38, and it was regarding the rink boards because I made the motion about it, the $500, and then looking through the budget, I noticed there's a $250 coming out of the community forest, but when you look at the $500,000. It's coming out of taxation. So just some clarity on this.
Madam Chair, so on that line item, it's still coming out of taxation. So we have 250 coming out of taxation and 250 coming from the Alberni Valley Community Forest Reserve. So that is in the financial plan as that. So you can see on the reserve page for the Alberni Valley Community Forest, and that's on page 4, the Alberni Valley. Okay. So that would be on page 45 of the agenda. And that's the 250 coming from the multiplex boards. So within the financial plan, it's separated out. It's the notation on that page that you noted, Councillor Solda.
Thank you. I thought we found 250 more, but I guess it wasn't. Thank you.
We did not. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for that, Andrew. We have no staff reports today, so on to bylaws, and item number 1, of course, is the City of Port Alberni 2025 to 2029 Financial Plan, bylaw number 5123, 2025, and this is final adoption. Councillor Dame, would you like to read this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that City of Port Alberni 2025 to 2029 Financial Plan Bylaw Number 5123, 2025 be now finally adopted, signed by the Mayor and Corporate Officer, and numbered 5123.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dame, seconded by Councillor Patola. Any comments? Seeing none. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And item number 2, Parks, Recreation and Culture Facilities Fees and Charges Bylaw, and this is final adoption as well. Councillor Solda, would you like to read this one?
Sorry, Madam Mayor. I move that the Parks and Recreation and Culture Facilities Fees and Charges below bylaw number 5106, 2024 be now finally adopted, signed by the Mayor and Corporate Officer, and numbered 5106.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Patola. Seeing no comment. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Willa.
Madam Mayor, just to confirm that an outstanding item is council determining the effective date of the bylaw. So the report in front of you today outlines September 1st start. Based on a change in season, another natural start date for council's consideration would be January the 1st.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Are we saying January the 1st of 2026?
Madam Mayor, it would be whichever year you would like to commence.
Okay, I just thought maybe you were going backwards a little. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would make a motion that the Parks, Recreation, and Cultures Facility Fees and Charges bylaw take effect. I thought that the question was when it was to take effect.
Well, we already have a motion on the floor for final adoption, so separate to that, I think right after, it would be fine to do that motion, but thank you for that. Okay. Or we could do amend, but no, we can't amend final. No. Okay. Okay, seeing no other comments on this piece then, so just on final adoption, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed, and go ahead, Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would make a motion that the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Facilities Fees and Charges bylaw number 5106, 2024, number 5106, I guess now, take effect starting September the 1st of 2025.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Dame. Any discussion on the date? Okay, seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Correspondence for action. We have one item today, and that is the BC Farmers Markets letter, which comes to us every year. This is for the BC Farmers Markets, reporting the results of the 2024 Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program and requesting that the city send a letter of thank you to the Honourable Minister Josie Osborne, Minister of Health. I think this is the first time we've gotten to send this letter to Josie, so go ahead, Councillor Solda.
Motion to concur.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And on to H, proclamations. Walk for Human Values Day, April 24th, 2025. Councillor Patola, would you read this one?
I would rather not.
Councillor Verbrugge, could you read this motion?
Letter dated February 28, 2025, from the Walk for Values Steering Committee requesting a proclamation that council on behalf of Walk of Values proclaim April 24th, 2024 as Human Values Day in Port Alberni.
Thank you so much. Moved by Councillor Verbrugge. Is there a seconder?
Second for discussion.
Seconded by Councillor Solda. Go ahead, Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I don't remember this coming before us. Has it?
It comes every year, yes.
Okay, so maybe it could be explained so the public knows what Walk for Values is all about, just to know what it is.
Sure, there's a little bit of information in the package, but maybe our corporate officer could give an overview.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can do that. So this is a commitment to raising awareness and promoting the practice of human values, thus building communities of character. And so it has come to us, I believe this is the third or fourth year.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. On the motion to make the proclamation, all in favor? And opposed? Motion carried. Okay, thanks, everyone. And on to correspondence for information. I'll go to our corporate officer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a resolution requesting support from City of Abbotsford regarding the Housing Act, a statement on U.S. tariffs from the BC salmon farmers, and a letter from the Ministry of Emergency Management noting that in discussions further to our resolution that they've identified that our fire department can use the government radio network, and so they'll be working on implementing that as soon as possible to assist in the fire department's communication needs.
Thank you. I will just comment that that's great news on the fire department piece. I think that will address some of the concerns that we heard, and yeah, really fantastic to hear. So thanks to whoever made that connection, probably staff. Other items councillors would like to speak to? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Solda, could you move receipt?
Motion to receive the reports?
Thank you. Motion to receive, seconded by Councillor Dame. Correspondence. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And our corporate officer, Sarah, could you please read out the reports from in camera?
I would be pleased to. Thank you. Council releases for public consumption authorization that we are proceeding with the Harbour Quay Spirit Square license of occupation agreements with the Farmers Market and Crafters Market at a monthly rate of $97.45 plus GST for 2025. Also, authorization for staff to increase monthly rates for Harbour Quay Spirit Square to $192 per month plus GST to reflect fair market value beginning in 2026. Council releases for public consumption direction that staff prepare a letter to the Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce to meet their requirement as part of the renewal package submission to Destination BC, confirming the Chamber as the sponsor organization and lead provider of community visitor services for the City of Port Alberni. And further, that administration communicate to the Chamber that the city's directors of the ACRD will support their application for funding of visitor services at a regional level. Thank you.
Thank you. And on to council reports. Are there any items councillors would like to speak to in reports? Okay, then we'll move on from those. Actually, move receipt. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Patola, seconded by Councillor Dame. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And on to new business. Item number 1, we have a development variance permit, DVP 124 for 4609 10th Avenue. And I'll welcome up our Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So before you today, we have a development variance permit for 4609 10th Avenue. The requested variance is to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 5 meters to 2.41 meters. So, and what this is being triggered by is an application to subdivide the property. Why is it only wanting to go backwards and forwards? Can you? I got it to go for the second slide, but then it wanted to go back. Next one. Yeah. Nope, I got it. Okay. So the applicant is applying to subdivide this property, which makes a technical change to the front yard from 10th Avenue to Hollywood Street for the existing house. And therefore that changes what was previously a side yard setback to a rear yard setback for the existing structure. And as part of the subdivision approval process, the applicant had the option to either apply for a variance to reduce that rear, what will now be a rear yard setback to allow the existing house to stay as is, or they would have had to remove a portion of that garage house in order to move forward with the subdivision. The applicant has requested for council to consider this setback variance. So here you can see the current house as it is and how it fronts 10th Avenue. and it's the garage portion. So the building will stay essentially the same, but if council was to grant the variance, then the subdivision could proceed and they would not be required to remove a portion of that building in order to meet the setback. So the variance would enable the subdivision to proceed and a new vacant lot to be created, which potentially, a new housing can be built on, so that would assist in meeting our housing needs assessment. Staff do not anticipate any complications. The house will actually remain exactly as it currently is. 52 letters of notice were sent out to area owners and occupants. The city has not received any correspondence to date on this. Council's options are, of course, to consider and grant this variance, to decline this variance, or to request additional information. Staff are supporting this application, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from council? Okay, seeing none, Councillor Dane, would you like to read the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council authorize the issuance of development variance permit number 124 and that the Director of Corporate Services be authorized to sign the permit granting the following variance to the zoning bylaw at 4609 10th Avenue. Vary section 5.10.2 R primary residential site development regulations, minimum setback rear yard from 5 meters to 2.41 meters for a variance of 2.5 meters for the existing single detached dwelling.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dame, seconded by Councillor Patola. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? None opposed, carried. Thank you. And item number 2, under new business, we have 2025 tax rate review.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with the report that's in front of council today, this is a request from the committee to follow up on how different shifts in the tax rate or tax share, sorry, would impact the different classes. So when we look at taxation, it is based on the requirement for us to balance the budget. So we set the tax rates and tax share every year to balance the budget. Approximately 99.64% of the tax share comes from residential, industrial, and commercial, and there's some smaller components within there. When we look at Table 1, this is the distribution of the tax share in 2024. This has been fairly consistent since about 2021 as far as tax, but we have seen some growth in light industry. So we've done some tax shifting between light and major industry a little bit as we've seen that tax share grow. Moving on to 2025 in Table 2, this is the working recommendation that would be coming forward to council unless there's direction to change. There was some minor decreases in light industry, so we balanced that between both light and major industry. As we have done in the past, there's always been a bit of change depending on the growth in light industry and major industry, and then we bring that forward for council's consideration. So at this time, before the ask of council to look at a tax shift, this is what it's sitting at right now. So it's approximately the same as we have had in the past few years. If we look at Table 3, this was an example that was provided to move major industry to 20%, light industry to 5%, and then share that shifting of the reduction to residential and commercial, and that was approximately 1.65% reduction in both Class 1 and Class 6. Of course, we cannot set the tax rates until we get the revised rule from BC Assessment. The revised rule provides the maybe revaluation of some properties depending on any appeals or any changes that happen to the rule from the completed rule. Moving on to table 4, this is what the proposed tax share would look like, noting that we did have a non-market change component that was allocated to asset management in 2025, and that's approximately $370,000 in 2025, and that would still result in a average single-family residential home having a tax increase of about 13.98%. So as you can see here, the class share, the percentage increase varies because there is that non-market change that's being allocated. And when we look at the commercial class, there was a larger than usual growth in commercial class. So that was about 2.9% for non-market change there. So that's why it's going up 17%. But on the whole, the properties would be going about that 14% increase per class. But with a tax shift, you can see that light industry has a larger impact because of the smaller base, and moving from just over 3% to 5% has quite an impact. And that would have an 81% increase if we made a shift such as that to a small share in the tax share across the taxation. Even with major industry, that would see major industry go up about 23% in taxation from that class. So, it is quite impactful. The smaller the class share is, the larger the impact is percentage-wise as we shift that. So just noting that, I know we've brought forward quite a bit of information in the last year and a half to council to better understand how tax share is set. And with that, I hope that this would help clarify some of the questions that council may have had about making any shifts to the tax share across the classes. So with that, it's back to council for any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? Okay. Seeing none, would somebody like to move receipt? Oh, sorry, there's an and further, but move receipt, thank you, by Councillor Patola and Councillor Dame. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And Councillor Patola, would you like to read the next part?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council indicate support for tax share splits consistent with 2024 and with the shifts based on non-market change in the 2025 revised assessment rule.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Patola, seconded by Councillor Dame. Are there any comments on this piece? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And on to item number 3, train station and building envelope modification, and I'll go to Councillor Dame.
I will be recusing myself due to a personal relationship with the tenant.
Thank you. So once Councillor Dame is out of the room, I'll just pass it over to our Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the city-owned train station is a heritage site, and bylaw 3963 requires council approval prior to any work being undertaken on the exterior of that building. At the August 3rd, 2023 regular meeting, council approved numerous modifications indicated in red on page 175 of the agenda package. Since that meeting, Twin City Brewing has been confirmed as the tenant, and based on the tenant's specific equipment needs in their kitchen, there is one additional modification that would be required, which is the installation of another exterior door as outlined in yellow on page 175 as well. So the Heritage Commission has been consulted on this change, which they support, and staff recommend that council approve this additional modification.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, and before we read the motion, I just want to thank the Heritage Commission for engaging on this, or please pass along our thanks. I know there's been a number of times that we've come to them on this building and this project, so really appreciate, especially the last couple of times. I know they were able to give us some quick input to help in making our decisions, so appreciate that very much. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I move that the council direct staff to proceed with the exterior modification to the train station to improve access to the commercial kitchen on site as per Waymark architect drawings. Proposed modifications included in the report to council dated March 6, 2025.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Patola. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And we will welcome Councillor Dame back into the room and then go to question period. So this is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council on decisions or recommendations made during the course of this meeting. Up to 3 questions per speaker can be permitted. Would anybody like to speak today? Would anyone like to ask questions today? Joseph, oh, sorry, I'll go to Jolene. Come on forward.
Hi, Mayor and Council. You guys are speeding through today's meeting. Thank you so much. I'm Jolene Dick. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce. And I want to speak to the visitor services contract, of course, that was released for public consumption already, but we did share with our stakeholders in the community that our visitor center is closed. So my questions I'm just curious if the public will be able to consume any information that was deliberated in making that decision. I understand that there could have been options perhaps explored on different levels of funding, seasonality, and whichever. And just a quick note that we have had to lay off 1 person as of Friday, and just note that it impacts our lending ability for future endeavors that we were currently exploring. So I'm just curious if any info will be released on what options were presented to council.
Thank you, appreciate that. I know that we release for public consumption the council decision. We don't typically release information that was considered. However, we could take that to in-camera to discuss if we're able to release the options that were considered and get back to you on that. Anything additional, Mike? Okay. Thank you. And I know that you are you presenting to the ACRD or requesting to ACRD options for funding?
We will be. So I had another question for City Council. If they deliberated that the funding pot that the Chamber would be applying for at the ACRD is their community grant and aid. And so the deadline to apply for that grant is April 30th. But currently that funding pot is only $78,000, which is less than the amount that was going to be what has been our traditional fee-for-service of what we do on behalf of the city, and we're happy to do this on behalf of the regional district. So we are scheduled for Wednesday, March 12th at the table and making that request to expand that pot so that there's room for us to fill the funding gap.
Thank you for that. And myself and Councillor Haggard, I believe, myself and Councillor Solda actually will be there at that meeting. So we will keep our questions for that meeting. But yeah, I appreciate that that is not the kind of long-term funding pot that I think we all see as a vision for that, as grant and aid is by nature short-term, can change every year, doesn't have a lot of certainty. So and I'll say this at the regional district, but what I would love to see is for a model more similar to the Sprout Lake Marine Patrol to be utilized for that. And that takes time and it requires referendum, but Sprout Lake Marine Patrol, for people who aren't aware, as city taxpayers, Beaver Creek taxpayers, all taxpayers of the Alberni Valley contribute to the Sprout Lake Marine Patrol, recognizing that it keeps us all safe. They provide a great service to visitors and residents at the lake and anybody who chooses to use it. And they were funded by way of referendum about 10 years ago on an election ballot where they asked the question and ended up with permanent funding that is every year that is contributed by the whole valley. We would really like to see a similar approach taken for visitor services where there's continuity of funding, but where it is shared by the whole valley. So I think it will take some steps to hopefully get to move closer to that. But yeah, just recognize the challenges of grant and aid not being the ideal funding source for size and for the uncertainty of it. So appreciate your comments. Thank you. Joseph, I think you had your hand up as well.
Good afternoon, everybody. That, if without questions, half-hour meeting, that's got to be a record. With that in mind, I want to ask again, time-wise, because the committee of the whole meetings have been really, really long. This is probably one of the shortest I've seen yet. And I was asking last time about some things being put into the daytime meetings rather than the committee of the whole to shorten those up a bit. And I'm curious on staff and people that have to be here for the committee of the whole meetings, how that works with pay, for one thing, because those go really long. Daytime meetings, I think those are considered regular hours. So when it goes that long in the evening, is that extra cost involved in that sort of thing?
Go to our CAO for that.
Sure, thanks for the question. It really depends on the role. Most exempt staff, we get some lieu time, not taken as pay, but that's only limited at 75 hours per year, which a lot of the senior managers put that in the first few months. So it is usually just part of the roles of the duties. There are some people that are here running the meetings. If they go after hours, it's not part of their regular duties and therefore would be at overtime rates. However, there's not as many unless they're actually helping run the meetings.
Yeah, and I think that's a good question. And before you moved to town, but all of our meetings actually used to be 7 o'clock meetings, and so we did have and we didn't have committee of the whole meetings either when I started on council. So we did move more to day meetings, feeling like it made a lot of sense with staff and a variety of other reasons. But what we heard, of course, was feedback from the public that on the items that required a lot more discussion, they wanted to be able to attend those meetings in the evenings. You'll know we don't usually get a lot more people at those meetings, but they do go longer because they are the bigger discussion items. Whereas today we've got, mostly on our agenda things that are final reading, and we've already had all of that discussion. So it's a fine balance for sure. I'm not sure it really justifies any changes for right now. And these committee of the whole meetings recently have been extra long because we've had some really big topics, but I don't foresee that will be an always trend. Certainly just with the budget and a few other bigger pieces we've been discussing, they've gone extra long, and we want to make sure we've got time to have those discussions.
Okay, thank you. Another question is regarding the decision for the fees for use of facilities, parks and rec. So it was voted on today, it was passed today that the increase would start, I think, September of 2025. So the other thing that was within the consideration to be looked at was the administration to explore development of a lease agreement with the Sunshine Club regarding fees. And I'm just curious how that is, because that's 2025, so increase will be happening quickly. Does you expect to have something fairly soon with the Sunshine Club, with that looked at closely, and then come up to, so that members of that have a sense of what's happening in the fall? So I do expect something to happen quite quickly with that.
Sure, thank you for the question. I'll just welcome up our director again, and who can speak to that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So staff have already been in touch with the Sunshine Club, have had multiple conversations. The next step would be to sit down in more of a formal setting to develop the lease, and the goal would be to have that lease in place and signed off by council before that September 1st date.
Excellent, thank you for that, and thanks for getting to work on it so quickly.
Great, thank you. It's good to hear that, and I would love to see. I'm not part of that. I'm just part of the Sunshine Club, but not actively involved, and wouldn't be engaged in those talks. So thank you for that information. The last just quick question. Today the motion was passed for the walk of values. I think is clear. Now, if you read that motion, it's just a technical thing, but I think it says approved for April of 2024 in there in the motion. So just a note, it should be 2025. I don't think you have to re-vote on it, just make a correction on that.
Thank you, you're right, it does.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Leslie.
Oh, there we go. Hi. Budget, yay, done. But I do have a couple of questions. Cindy, thank you very much for bringing up that point about page 38 and the taxation and the ice rink boards. On page 38, it just says taxation, it doesn't say split, and it did have an asterisk saying what the split would be. So good point on that one. My next question is, well, it isn't a question, I guess I just made a statement and said thank you. The other one is about the tax rate and the revised roll. When approximately does the revised roll happen?
Director of Finance, I can't remember. Go ahead, Andrew.
Madam Chair, the date is usually around March 24th, 25th, but has to be completed by March 31st.
Complete by which date?
March 31st.
March 31st. Perfect. Thank you very much for that. And my final question is, just because public questions weren't received for the budget this year, stopped early in the process, will public questions be addressed in the future? Are you coming out with a policy, or will they be on the city website? Like, I'm not sure what
Are you
the
referring
answer
to
is.
public questions in general or
Well,
budget
to-
questions we previously received?
Well, them as well as in the future.
Sure. So I think in the future, we'll continue to receive questions as we always do. We have a council correspondence log, and we have other ways when there's correspondence for action as well. I would imagine no change. We haven't changed that policy at all. We simply, and we didn't not receive them. We did receive those questions. Council received all of the questions. What we didn't do was automatically add them to the budget Q&A document. So council has received all of the questions that have been asked.
But not necessarily answered them. So will they be published in the future as a follow-up to the budget?
Mike, did you want to speak to just correspondence log and how we typically treat that?
Yeah, thanks. The public questions that come in that are referred to council usually are kept in a log, and then the answers are provided and then provided back to council through that correspondence log. If some of the information is already in a public agenda from either previous years, public will be just referred to that area and they can do their own research instead of staff going into the previous public meetings and digging up the information. But in general, yes, we do answer questions and we provide it to council on the correspondence register.
Okay. I guess just an addition to that would be that quite often it'll say a report will follow, but nobody ever knows when that report will follow. Is there follow-up to the follow-up?
I think anytime there's a report that will follow, then that report comes to a public council meeting. And it also, once a year, we report on motions and what's on our, I'm sorry, I can't remember what we call the document. Resolution tracking. So if there's a report to follow, it's likely because council has made a resolution for that report. And the resolution tracking report for both in camera becomes public, most of the information on it, as well as the public resolutions.
Oh, okay. So that's an in-camera resolution tracking?
No, it comes to our public agenda. It came earlier this year, and there's a public version of it as well. So if you follow the public agendas, then all of the reports pending will come to public agendas.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll have to dig deeper into the agendas.
Yeah, I think if you're following council agendas, all of the information does become public. If you're waiting on a specific report, you can absolutely ask for a status update on when you expect that to come, and you can ask that at a public council meeting. You can also often just email a member of council, and we'll be happy to give you an update to the best of our knowledge.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you very much for your time, and yay, celebrate budgets passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Would somebody like to move adjournment? And sorry, we have an in-camera meeting recessed, and so I think we're adjourning. Do we adjourn we have, okay. Just adjourn, reconvene in there. Wonderful. Okay, motion to adjourn moved and seconded. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you.